Good afternoon and welcome. It's great to be back here at the Delphi Economic Forum. I was here last year for the first time, and it seems, my impression, it gets better every year. It's hard to see you down at the other end, Andreas, Kindl. If you could just scoot your chair out a little bit, and then we can all kind of see each other. Marvelous, I like that. Thank you very much. I'll scoot mine out too. Good. I'm really delighted to be moderating this session on Germany and the future of Europe in light of recent developments. It was already talked about a bit in the previous panel, and there is a lot to talk about. The title of our session is Germany Post-Elections, a Turning Point for the Future of Europe. I'll first introduce our distinguished speakers, set the scene for our topic, and then we'll get going straight away. And I hope towards the end to be able to open the floor for questions a little bit if we have more time. So, next to me, Alisa Vogt is Program Director at the International Affairs Department of the Körber-Stiftung. The Körber-Stiftung is one of Germany's most active non-profit foundations. Next to her, Nathanael Liminski is Minister for Federal European International Affairs and Media in the great German state of North Rhine-Westphalia. And down at the far end, Andreas Kindl, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany to Greece. A warm welcome for our speakers. Unfortunately, Martin Bialecki from the German Council on Foreign Relations is unable to join us due to the strike, as you may all have heard about that. So yeah, quite a few people, unfortunately, are getting caught up on that. My name is Terry Martin. I'm an international news journalist, TV anchor based in Berlin. I've lived in Germany for over 30 years now, most of my life, as it turns out. So, just some quick background on our topic, and then we'll jump straight in, okay? Germany, as you know, held a snap election in February. The main issues roughly were the economy, migration, and security, not least Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and everything attached to that. The center-right CDU-CSU bloc came out on top in that election, followed by the far-right AfD. Right now, the Conservatives are trying to form a coalition government with the Social Democrats, the SPD, who came in third. CDU leader Friedrich Merz is very likely to become the next Chancellor of Germany. He's referred to basically as the Chancellor in waiting. And until the coalition negotiations are hammered out and sealed, it could take just a very short time, because we heard today, just within the last couple of hours, that the parties in those coalition negotiations have indeed agreed on what seems to be an agreement, but it still has to be approved by the rank and file of the Social Democrats. And I'm not sure, maybe we will hear when this might happen, as we have a representative of the CDU on our panel here. But before the government takes seat, we still have the old government in place to a degree, with Chancellor Olaf Scholz still serving as caretaker. But anyway, Germany's election, as we all know, did not happen in a vacuum, right? The vote was held just 1 month after Donald Trump was sworn in again as US president, and his election has changed everything. It's going, I'm sure, will dominate discussions over the course of the next 3 days here too, what that means. President Trump immediately set to work dismantling what many call the rules-based international order. Transatlantic ties rapidly deteriorated with profound implications for Europe and the rest of the world. So, Germany's incoming government will face Herculean challenges. Yes, we are in Greece. Herculean challenges in dealing with the issues with its European partners, particularly with respect to the economy and security. Germany is under pressure to step up in a way that it hasn't been in the post-war period, and this does look very much like a turning point in Europe, for Europe, in my eyes. So a lot to talk about under the overarching question: how will Germany's incoming government seek to shape Europe's industrial, trade, and security policy in this radically altered environment? I'd like to begin by asking our panelists, all three of you, to just quickly give your thoughts on this. The top 2 or 3, and I mean very quickly, like 1, 2, 3, what do you see as the top 2 or 3 challenges that Germany and its European partners are facing right now, and how well prepared do you think Germany is to help Europe in addressing those? Start right here.
Wow. Well, I think European security and defense.
Security, defense? Security, defense.
A tectonic shift in transatlantic relations. And I think also, and we'll come to that later, I think also sort of the coherence and sort of how German society is thinking about all of that, because I mean, I think we're going to talk about that, but sort of polling numbers of the parties are not are moving a lot in a worrying way as well.
Cohesion, yeah. So, and how well do you think Germany is prepared to address these challenges?
On a scale from 1 to 10?
That'd be great.
I think we can all agree that on a, or no, I would say we can agree that in terms of security and defense, there's a lot to be done. So I would say a 5. Okay. I think on US, wow, yeah, I got myself in a very difficult position with it from 1 to 10.
Starting with the 10-point scale.
I think all of them are huge challenges, and I think this momentum of the new government need to really get us from small numbers to 8s and 9s. Let's put it that way.
Thank you very much, Nathanael Liminski.
I'd say that the two big tasks being solved on the European level would be security and defense and competitiveness. But the problem is that coming from the German public, it would be migration. And I think it's rather important to solve competitiveness and security and defense first. But the public political discussion in Germany is much more about migration. So we will have to search for a solution, a European solution on that issue as well. That's actually what Friedrich Merz is preparing, to do it right from his first days on, May 8, 9. And to your question, how prepared we are, I think there are lots of thoughts already being made on migration. Concerning security and defense, we have a preparation, as we have exemptions of the debt brake already decided.
Huge thing.
Huge thing, huge shift in German politics, especially for my party. Still discussed, but when it comes to competitiveness, this actually worries me the most, because I'm not sure if the coalition treaty, which is going to be presented right now, has the right level of ambition when it comes to fight back for competitiveness of German industry and European industry in general.
Thank you very much. Just for context, as anyone in this room probably already knows, the current German parliament, before the new parliament actually takes power, the new government takes power, the old parliament in the transitional period managed to pass some agreements with the support of the outgoing Green Party to basically free up close to €1 trillion in money for defense spending and infrastructure spending. So that's a lot of latitude. We'll see what happens with that, how it plays out, but you mentioned the debt brake, they will suspend the debt brake for certain expenditures, particularly related to defense. Andreas, Kindl.
Maybe this is an advantage or disadvantage, I'm not quite sure, because I haven't spent a lot of time in Germany for the last couple of years. So looking from
like a good diplomat.
Exactly. This is how diplomats live. I would agree that security, of course, security and competitiveness are the two subjects. I would disagree on migration, giving it a huge amount of relevance. This is, of course, a relevant subject, but it is, I think, if you look at expectations of the people towards government, I think this is not one of the main points. The main point is to, I would say, get out of slumber, get out of doze, and start moving, not just talking. And I think one of the expectations was, after the elections, that we have a coalition agreement which has only 3 pages and not 120. We have very quickly a government, and I think we have a government very quickly, which is a good thing. This is almost record time, I would guess. I don't know how huge, how thick the coalition agreement will be, and we will all rush back to our computers afterwards and see what the text is like. But I think competitiveness is a strong aspect. We don't want to hang out at stagnation. We don't want to. We don't like to see this anymore. And obviously, if you look at the polls and if you look at what does European Union mean to people, a very large, I think the largest percentage for the last 30 years says they need to do more about our security. So I think security is obviously the biggest challenge, and you mentioned quite rightly that we changed our constitution. We don't do that very often, so this is a major step in order to allow more resources for security and for defense. But resources is not everything. Now we need to actually work along the capacities and capabilities we're having and the needs, the demands. So plenty of work to do, and all we want, if I speak as a citizen, all we want is move it. So.
Well, you know, while you're there, you talked about expectations within Germany, and you mentioned that you've been outside of Germany yourself for quite a while, which is what diplomats do. I want to put this question to you about expectations from Germany's partners. What are they expecting of Germany in addressing the challenges, the common challenges that Europe shares? What are you hearing from that?
Sure. I mean, I think the word that repeats itself very often is leadership. This is not just a period, I think, where people thought there is stagnation, economic and political stagnation in Germany, but also in Europe. So I think what a lot of people expect from the biggest member state of the European Union is driving force, leadership with others, of course, because this is how we do it. This is not a one-state machine. Together with others, we work together. So I think that's the expectation I hear in Greece also, but in other countries as well. That's what my colleagues hear from other countries as well.
That's, I was hoping you would draw on that knowledge within the foreign ministry. Alisa, I will ask you, because you deal with very broad picture international affairs. That's your specialty. How closely do you see Germany's interests and values aligning with those of its European partners, particularly on economic and security policy?
Well, I think on security policy, we've seen in the last couple of weeks that there is big alignment, big cohesion, that Europe needs to step up, not just in the frame of the EU, but also with partners such as the UK. In economic terms, I mean, we've just heard it, how important competition is. Obviously, there's always disagreement on details in Brussels, but I mean, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, that Friedrich Merz has proclaimed that for him it's very important to get out of sort of situations of political deadlock, because there's different positions in Berlin on certain issues. So we'll see how with this probably new government decisions are taken. Can you hear me well? I feel like this is, yeah, okay.
Okay, Nathanael, Liminski, if you want to reflect on that as well, I would welcome your input. But I was thinking about the whole concept of multilateralism. Right? The U.S. is not into multilateralism anymore, right? It used to be. Angela Merkel was a champion of multilateralism. She used this term a lot in her speeches. But multilateral institutions are under tremendous strain. The UN, the WTO, the WHO, the ICC, NATO, take your pick. The European Union is hanging in there pretty well, with some exceptions. Just wondering, what does this deterioration of multilateralism in general, before we get to the US, mean for Germany, which finds itself within these multilateral institutions, and suddenly they're just not really what they used to be?
I think in Germany there is a broad consensus that it's in Germany's and Europe's interest to have strong multilateral organizations. The public has learned that it's not just us giving the money for it, but it's in our own interest. Because if you look at Germany being the industry number 4, I think, in worldwide scale, in comparison to those other big economies, we would never be able to push our political agenda without the multilateral organizations. So meaning, of course, first European Union, but later on NATO, of course also the UN capacities or bodies. So as a German government will be supportive, and I see actually a chance, an opportunity in a situation when the US are taking out money and engagement, that Germany, to some extent, not the full extent of the US, of course, can step in. And so, for example, concerning aid or development aid, as Donald Trump, together with Elon Musk, has destroyed USAID, there was a discussion in Germany about changing the ministries and incorporating the Ministry on Development Aid into the Foreign Office. I was against it, and others as well. And so far, from what I hear, it will stay a ministry on its own, which is a good sign, because this shows that Germany understands that we have to react and cannot just follow our national debates, but we have to react to this absolutely new situation which we are confronted with right now.
Germany, for so long, has been in this rather comfortable position of having security, just like the rest of Europe, provided largely by the United States and as in the background in the form of NATO, as providing almost half of the resources of NATO, and always kind of feeling, oh, we're protected, so we'll spend some on defense, but we've had this massive peace dividend, great. We have Europe's biggest economy. We carry huge political and economic weight in the world, and particularly in Europe. So we just kind of focus on doing what we do in Germany, and we'll find our way of making arrangements with others. This seems to now be changing, and you mentioned leadership, Andreas Kindl, that Europeans and other countries are looking to Germany for leadership now, particularly in Europe. Where does that leadership what form will that leadership take? How will it express itself, and in what domains do you see the greatest potential for that? Also looking at Germany's political assets in a government led by Friedrich Merz.
I come back to one aspect of the last question you posed, European Union multilateralism, because we've been working in the European Union on reforms, because at the same time we want an enlargement, we want this to be bigger, to be a bigger space of like-minded states, but we have to, and we expect from those candidates a lot. At the same time, we need to do our own task. We need to do reforms within the European Union, because we cannot expect that a larger European Union follows the same rules in terms of consensus and so on as the European Union before. So I think leadership can also mean that we push stronger for rules that allow this European Union to be more effective. We've been trying this for quite some time, and I understand that quite a few of those member states are not willing to give up those sovereign rights they seem to have had, and there's one commissioner they hold on. But I think this is a period, and it not just started with Trump, second phase, and what else, but it started with the Russian attack on Ukraine. It started even earlier with the corona. All of those major disruptions of what we have been used to live through. So I think this is a a particular moment where we all need to see, and I think their leadership is helpful, where we all need to see that we cannot continue along the same consensus rules we've had in the European Union, but we need to make this more flexible. We need to make this more effective. And I think it would be a good choice to work on that along that lines.
So the decision-making structures, perhaps within the European Union, not requiring unanimity on some votes where it is currently required, particularly on foreign policy. But yeah, the fundamental flaw in the European Union, of course, is the lack of it being a political entity. You have 27 individual sovereign states who are pursuing their thing. Anyway, Mr. Liminski.
Well, first of all, I think if you listen to Friedrich Merz, he emphasized, even during the campaign, but also afterwards, that he wants his ministers to be present in Brussels, which for a Christian Democratic chancellor, it's not always, it has not been always like this. So, but I think to me it shows that he has a very strong sense for the necessity to work on the European level. We always have to remind ourselves he has started his political career as a member of the European Parliament, which has had a big influence on his political identity. And second, I mean, if you look at the reasons for the German economical success in the last years, it has been cheap energy from Russia, the security guarantees from the United States, and rather secure markets in China. And all the three of them are gone. So this shows that we need a new solution, we need a new approach in order to secure the wealth as we have it in Germany. And all this leads to more engagement in Brussels, more engagement with our European partners. And so not to wait for reforms. The beginning could be to have a stronger, honest coordination with our partners. And I have seen that with Friedrich Merz in the last weeks, that even as an opposition leader, even during his campaign, he has already, before important talks with J.D. Vance, with others, he has had a strong coordination with Macron, with Tusk, and others. And I think in order to be ready also to talk with Trump and his administration, instead of waiting for a new majority system, although I agree, we could start by being much better coordinated and then travel over, not always together, but if we travel there and have done our homework first and before, then we can also stand the challenge by Trump and his administration.
That sounds like a pretty good, appeal for showing that kind of leadership within the party. And I understand, by the way, that for the first time in 60 years, that the foreign ministry might end up in the hands of the CDU, which would be something new. Anyway, Alisa, you wanted to comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, which I find very interesting when we speak about leadership. I mean, not sort of now just limited to what is happening in Brussels, but to look at public opinion as well, because just because we talked about external expectations earlier with the ambassador, Körber-Stiftung actually started a public opinion survey in 2016 just because of that, because there was a lot of expectations from abroad, but what is the public opinion in Germany on these issues? And it's very interesting because if you sort of compare what Friedrich Merz has proposed or proclaimed so far of what he would like to do and seek leadership and how to support Ukraine, etc., you see strong support in the public opinion on sort of putting more money into defense, supporting Ukraine. 3%, all of that sort of, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of support in working more with European partners. France is an important partner, etc. But then when it comes to leadership questions, so last year, just after the elections, in this representative survey, the Germans were asked if they were ready to assume Western leadership if the US restrains, and only 35% thought that was a good idea. And if you look at sort of the military aspect of if you ask Germans if they would be ready to assume military leadership role, 65% don't want that. So I think that's also interesting to keep in mind, sort of when we discuss about what the German leadership is planning on doing, wants to do, etc. It's always good to look into these numbers as well.
Let's just broaden things out a little bit, because I mean, Germany, we already heard it in the previous session. We have to look beyond Europe. We're operating within a global context, and there are multiple players. And particularly if relations with the United States are deteriorating, if they continue to deteriorate the way they are, it will have massive implications. Germany is going to have to, and Europe will have to find new ways of cooperating with the world beyond its borders. I'm wondering where you might see potential for that, where Germany can show leadership, particularly in relation to, say, China and what some are calling the global south. Andreas Kindl? I realize this is a huge question. I mean, it's just, but I'm just wondering, within the leadership context in relation to Germany and Europe, and Germany is expected to show leadership in Europe, while Europe is struggling to maintain its own competitiveness in the world. It needs partners, it needs markets, and the US market isn't looking great at the moment.
Okay, I mean, I guess what we've been seeing recently is a strong realignment with the UK that left the European Union, and both sides, I think, I guess, are regretting this and trying to mend ways and find back in, especially in the field of defense and security. We have, the idea of the European Union is that a lot of things are communalized, like free trade agreements. And so I guess what the European Union should be doing is looking as far as they can. And if you line up the flags of those countries where we have free trade agreements, it's quite an impressive collection. That cannot supplement what the strongest economic and political ties with the US had in the past. So this is very obviously a very difficult transition period, and I think we need to be multi-pronged on that issue, because we need to try to find ways how to pick the best out of the US. Some of the little that is left, we can work with, and then also diversify into other areas. I'm not seeing that we're going towards China. I don't see that, but there is, I think, quite a lot of markets left around the world. Not as big as the US, and I think we have to realize that we will go into losses for the moment. But yeah, I don't have a global concept on that. But I guess it is the worst tactics to become too pessimistic about this.
I just want to bring in Nathanael Liminski here on this, because you're very much rooted in the CDU and what's going on. I'm sure we're following the coalition negotiations very, very closely. You're dealing with European and international policy within your portfolio. People at this conference are from all over Europe and around the world, and they're here in this room thinking about, well, where is Germany really going to show leadership? Where will that be? What form will it take? In what areas? What can they expect from Germany? You can say, here's an initiative where Germany is really going to lead on security vis-a-vis Russia, Ukraine, for an example, or on trade policy or competitiveness. You mentioned competitiveness, how fundamental that is to German society, and seems to be behind the curve on that to Germany's economy. Just where do you see this on what projects can we expect Germany to push leadership forward within Europe?
Well, I think there are different fields in which we need such a German leadership,
Yeah.
and I hope there will be. And I think we should start with ourselves. Looking, for example, at the challenge by the terrorists from the United States of America. Of course, we can argue about that. We can shout at them and whatever. But one solution would be to really go on concerning our common market in Europe. They were in a recent FT, in a recent piece in the Financial Times, there were some interesting numbers about that, because if we take all the barriers which are there within Europe on certain issues, energy, telecommunication, banking, the financial market, we still have barriers of 45% when it comes to goods and 110% when it comes to services. Lowering down these
within
Europe, because of a common market not being complete, and to lower down those barriers by 2.4% can offset a reduction of 20% in exports to the United States. And this shows that there is a potential to become stronger within Europe already. And who, if not Germany, would be the right leader or the right nation, the right member state, member country or state to push for an agenda like that? And I think others in Europe would really welcome it if we say we really want to go on concerning the common market. Second area would be the whole defense sector, because it's obvious that in German politics we have not such a culture of trading weapons as part of our foreign policy. And I think there are good reasons to it, to be reluctant and to be not too eager when it comes to that. But there has been a change in the last years. We have acknowledged as German society that we have to be armed in order to secure peace. It has taken some time, to be honest, and I can understand that others, I'm half French, so I know other approaches to that as well. But by now, I think we are ready to really go on when it comes to create common European systems, common European defense union. And I could imagine Friedrich Merz and this coalition to be really pushing that agenda, because this really combines the two of them, the Social Democrats as well as the Christian Democrats. With Boris Pistorius, our Minister for Defense, he is very eager when it comes to common projects, especially with France, but also with others. So I could imagine that this would be a field where you will see more German leadership.
We've only got about 8 minutes left. I'm going to want to get a couple of questions from the audience, but before we do, there's one development that I think needs to be mentioned. It's a bit of an elephant in the room. And in Germany, in these recent elections, I mentioned that the AfD came in second position, putting the Social Democrats into third place. Recent polling numbers show the AfD and the CDU-CSU bloc being completely even in recent pollings. In one poll, they even show it a percentage point beyond. I'd like to hear, maybe you can tell our audience what the implications of this development, of the rise of the far right in Germany, because some people are concerned. Starting with you, Alisa, what impact do you see the AfD and also the Bund Sarah Wagenknecht, the BSW party, a new fringe party that is there in Germany, didn't make it into parliament, but is still represented in different state parliaments. What impact do you see all this having on Germany's political trajectory and how it fits into Europe?
Well, I think what we've seen in the election campaign definitely was that they're able, especially the AfD, is able to put a lot of pressure on the CDU-CSU in terms of how they talk about migration. And that has completely, I mean, obviously together with the attack in mid-January, this has completely changed the entire discourse of the election campaign. I think this is an important point. The other point is, of course, how Russia is viewed. We see huge differences sort of how the war in Ukraine and how a just peace could look like. And the image of Russia differs also in the regions of Germany, and also depending on which party has majorities in these regions. So I think yes, you'll see that the new government is going to be under a lot of pressure. probably financing infrastructure is going to help, I hope. This is, you should never hope in politics, I think, but this is one of my hopes that sort of if there's really visible change in schools and streets and bridges, etc., that is going to take off a bit of that pressure, and good communication. And I think this goes back to everything sort of we talked about is a good communication because we need a mindset change. We need to talk about something that is beyond how do we finance things, where do we put money in, because that's, just throwing money at the problem is not going to change it. We need a mindset change in terms of how we think about war and peace, in terms of how we think also about Germany as a society that's, stays together and wants to fight for democracy. All of these very, very difficult conversations we need to have.
Any further comments from the two of you regarding the dwindling power of the centrist parties in Germany and the growing power of not power, but at least growth of the more fringe parties? You don't have to, if you'd like to.
Just one remark, because every time I'm outside Germany, abroad, I hear lots of applause to the recent decisions, for example, on the debt brake. You have to know that the discussion in Germany is vice versa. You have to acknowledge that there is a huge chunk of the electorship, of the electors who are not in favor of taking such a decision. Among the Christian Democrats, but especially among AfD people, and they see it as a broken a broken promise by Friedrich Merz, and this is why, as you said, he starts under a lot of pressure, and you have to know that in order to react the right way, because in order to be a strong leader within Europe, he has to have a strong fundament back home.
Exactly.
And I think he personally really wants to take this leading role, and he has already shown in some decisions, but we have to be cautious to take German public with us as well.
Okay. Any comments on that? Or?
I think the high numbers for AfD and also at a certain time for BSW are sign of dissatisfaction, obviously with a couple of problems, and Alisa mentioned some of them, and you mentioned some of them. So I guess with a government determined to change a lot of these things and with the resources at hand, and I hope smartly invested, I think those numbers will go down. I hope.
We'll see.
I expect it.
Of course, all of this affects Germany's capacity, the government's capacity to show leadership in certain ways. We only have about 3 minutes left. I know that we've got one question there at least. I think Roland, is there a mic floating around here? We have other people coming into the room. Well, yeah, you have a great voice. I know that. Let me see if there's a mic coming. 1, 2, 3. Don't see it coming. Go ahead. Let's hear it. Is it coming? Great.
Thank you. Roland Freudenstein, Brussels Freedom Hub and Free Russia Foundation. So here's a proposal for German leadership. Civil society support, global democracy support. And I know we've been neglecting hard power for decades, and the pendulum is shifting to the other side. But sometimes I think that even we in Europe and in Germany are in danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater at a time when the US is totally quitting the game with, USAID, Radio Free Europe, National Endowment for Democracy. So, we're not talking about the same amount of money as we need to spend for weapons, but to actually cut the civil society support budgets as it is happening in Germany and other countries, is, I think, a step in the wrong direction. We should do the contrary of that.
Okay, that's a comment. One more question or comment, very briefly. Try to keep it brief. Yes, sir. Gentleman in the back with the yellow. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Simon with College of Athens. I'd like to ask, surely the AfD's growing voter base did not appear out of nowhere. So
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Surely the AfD's growing voter base in recent years did not appear out of nowhere. I'd like to ask if perhaps has there been areas or policies where centrist parties have ignored and because of they've ignored it, perhaps out of convenience or ideological reasons, that's pushed the general public into viewing parties like the AfD to a more realistic option.
Great, thank you. We only have 1 more minute, that's why I'm being very brief with you, but thank you for your question. Go ahead.
Yes, I mentioned in the beginning the question of migration. I mean, the numbers are lower than they have been in recent years, but the discussion is still there, and you have to accept that. And actually, we haven't had a systematic solution to this issue now for 10 years. So, to be honest, this is also accusing my own party and former Chancellor Angela Merkel not solving that problem in a proper way, in a systematic way. I think there were steps to it, and I think it's an advantage that we have at least a beginning of a European solution with GEAS, and it's a huge milestone to have that, but we have to go on and to find a systematic solution, and there are many ideas on the market already, in order to get this issue solved, but also in order to stop the poisoning of the public debate in Germany in general.
And I think if I may add, because
I'm afraid we're out of time. I've been told to keep up, so I'm really sorry about this, but we're going to have to end it here. I'm just going to quickly introduce our next session. In conversation, we have Nikos Androulakis, president of PASOK Kindl of Greece, and Yannis Pretenteris, publisher of To Bima newspaper. In conversation. A warm round of applause for our panelists, and thank you all. Thank you.